Hi guys, I'm here with my monthly favorites today with a twist. Instead of just talking about beauty products and things like that, I'm going to talk about my favorite products and tips for Christmas cookie baking. Now, if you don't celebrate Christmas, maybe you celebrate some other holiday, but I celebrate Christmas, and at this time of year, we start baking. And what I bake for giveaways and to eat over the holidays are cookies. And I've really come to rely on these tools and these tips for making my cookies as good as they can be. So let's get into it. So first up, I just want to talk about this big old bin. And I live in a small house, we don't have a lot of storage. So what I do is I actually store all of my baking supplies for my cookies in this under the bed container that I got at HomeSense. So it's just a fabric bin with handles, and it has a clear lid so you can see what's inside, and it's meant to slide underneath the bed. But what I do is I have a bookshelf in my kitchen and I just slide this underneath the bookshelf. Most of these are pretty budget friendly, but there's one piece of equipment that's a little bit over budget, which I will talk about in a second. But first off, I want to talk about a baking sheet. And I know what you're thinking, whoopee-doo, it's a baking sheet. But the difference is, I was finding my cookies burned all the time. No matter what I did, I could reduce the heat, I could lower the amount of time that I baked my cookies, but they always burnt with parchment paper, everything. I always burnt the bottom of my cookies until I got a pan that has this neat little feature. I don't know if you can see, but there's an air insulated cushion on the bottom of my cookie sheet. So instead of just having this part come in contact with the rack in the oven, it's actually insulated. So it provides like a cushion of air, and it really helps with heat distribution, and it helps buffer the bottom of your cookies from the direct heat from the oven, and it has literally made a world of difference for my cookies. I cannot bake cookies without these insulated pans. These are Baker's Secret. They're available, I mean, I'm sure other companies make them as well, because I'm not sure if Baker's Secret is something that's available anywhere else than here in Canada. So Baker's sheet, a large cookie sheet. This was about $25, so not too expensive. I have two so that I can rotate while I'm baking cookies, but you only need one if you don't mind doing several batches in and out of the oven, but I like to have two so I can rotate. Next thing are these silicone baking pads. Again, another added layer of insulation from the bottom of your pan and the direct heat of the oven and your cookies. And the added bonus for these silicone pads is it prevents sticking, like it prevents your cookies from sticking to the bottom of the pan, which is excellent. And again, another layer of insulation because they're a little bit thick. They're made out of silicone, and you can get them at different price points. So these two I got at the dollar spot at Target a few years ago, and I just lay them side by side on my cookie sheet. These ones are a little bit more heavy duty. These are either, I think these might be Pampered Chef, or they might have come from a restaurant supply store. I'm not exactly sure. These ones are a little bit heavier. They're not my favorite because they're so heavy. I kind of like the thinner ones instead, but they're a little bit more expensive. And then this is another one that I got that has the added bonus of, on the back side, it has this little number system down the side and down the bottom, and it's to help you roll out pie crust or cookie dough. If you have to roll out to a certain size, you can just follow the grid line on the back and then flip it over, put it on your baking sheet. Excellent. These things are so good, and I used to use parchment paper on my cookie sheets, but I find that these work better because they're reusable. You just wash them in warm soapy water and you can reuse them over and over and over again. Okay. Next up are these little spatulas, and these you can just get at I bought these at the dollar store. I'm sure you can find them at different price points at different stores, but I just got mine at the dollar store. Why these are good is they're very, very thin, so they're excellent for sliding underneath the surface of the cookie and lifting them from the pan. And I prefer these metal ones to plastic ones because they're so thin and sharp. They go underneath the edge. Sometimes I find plastic spatulas will kind of hit the edge of the cookie and like push it across the pan or make it break apart. So this slides right underneath, cuts underneath, and lifts. And because it's stainless steel, it's very firm and it doesn't bend. So the cookie holds its shape. Like if you're taking, everybody knows if you take a cookie that's a little bit too warm off the pan or too quickly, you can run the risk of having your cookie fall apart. So these have become invaluable in helping my cookies retain their shape and separating from the pan really easily. These are really good. You can't be serious about cookies unless you get yourself one of these. So this is just an automatic like ice cream scoop, but it's for cookie dough. I'm not exactly sure what size this is. It doesn't say, but it makes a nice cookie that's about whatever, perfect size cookies in my opinion. I used to faff around with 2 teaspoons and just kind of like scoop and scrape and scoop and scrape. This is so much easier and it makes all of your cookies uniform, which is excellent. So you just scoop and plop. Okay, so my last piece of equipment that I have found invaluable in my whole cookie baking experience at Christmas time is something that I can't show you because it's too heavy to carry up here. It's my KitchenAid stand mixer. So I'll insert a picture of the one that I have. I have a beautiful red one. It's part of the Artisan series. A few years ago, they had a really great price point at on Amazon. It was like a sale and I got it for like $199, which is excellent because the original like industrial KitchenAid mixers can run upwards of like $350, if not more. It's been a while since I looked at the price point, so don't quote me on that. But they were around $300 and we got it for $200, so excellent price point. And why I recommend them, it doesn't have to be a KitchenAid, just some sort of stand mixer, because it allows you to make cookies in big batches and you don't get tired stirring, and it just allows, it's just so much better. If you're making shortbread, it helps whip the shortbread. It just helps mix those big heavy ingredients together. I find it's probably the most important piece of equipment that I've added to make my cookie making experience so much better. It comes with multiple pieces, so it comes with a dough hook, it comes with a whisk, so you can whisk egg whites, you can whisk whipped cream, you can make bread. Mine's got a great handy little plastic flour guard on the top, so when you're adding flour to wet ingredients, it doesn't spray all over your kitchen. I just love it, and because it's red, I leave it out in my kitchen all the time, so I really recommend some sort of stand mixer. You can just put it on your Christmas list and get it this year, and then next year you'll be able to use it to make your cookies with. So that's all the equipment that I have, and then I have 3 tips that I wanted to share with you. So the first tip is, if you're sitting down to make your Christmas cookies and you're following grandma's recipe or you're following mom's recipe, my recommendation is to turn the heat down. So the heat that they recommend in their recipe, I always knock 25 degrees off. So for example, if a cookie is said, like the recipe calls for 375 degrees, I always knock it down to 350, just because I find you get, because ovens are so much more powerful and hotter than they were years ago, I just find it helps to keep your cookies from baking too quickly and getting too brown and burning. So just play with your heat. I know it seems common sense, but it took me a while to learn that, to, you know, just systematically turn the heat down. Took a while to stick, but it stuck, and now it works. My favorite cookie to make is chocolate chip cookies, but for years I found my cookies were coming out looking like little cakes almost. They were like they rose really high and they didn't flatten out at all, and I always wanted a flat cookie. Then I started to adjust the amount of flour that I have. So by taking out, if I have a cup of flour, just taking a tablespoon of flour out just eliminates that kind of leavening that goes on and keeps my cookies flat, but not super flat. If you have cookies that are coming out of the oven and they look like they've melted and that they're like in puddle format, it usually means you're using too much sugar. So knock the sugar back and add a little bit more flour. So play with your flour, because flour also depends on, you know, the altitude of where you are and how humid it is and all that stuff. Okay, and the last tip that I have is to start early, bake in large batches, and freeze in large batches so that you can pull out into smaller batches as the season progresses and as you need to. So I used to do all kinds of baking throughout the season. If, you know, I thought, oh, I want to make cookies for so-and-so, so I would bake cookies, and then I would just kind of do it like that, and it's exhausting. So what I do now is I do like three or four kind of big bake sessions. And what I do is I freeze them in a large Tupperware container that I've dedicated in the freezer. And I'll even get ones at the Dollar Tree that are like red plastic ones so that everybody knows those are the Christmas cookies. And I freeze them in large batches. And then as time goes on, if I think, oh, I want to give, you know, the bus driver some cookies, or I want to give this coworker some cookies, I can go in and separate them into cute little tins like the ones that you see back there. So that's the biggest tip really, is bake in big batches. And it's less tiring that way than baking like lots of small batches. That's what I found anyway. So those are my tips and my favorite tools for making perfect Christmas cookies. If you celebrate cookies, or if you celebrate cookies, I celebrate cookies. If you celebrate Christmas and bake cookies, I hope that those tips are helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about holiday baking or whatever, just put them in the comment section and I will answer right away. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.